Welcome to Where We Meet, a podcast by Society. I'm Jessica Freiburg, and each episode we start with an accounting topic and then see where the conversation takes us. Because in our world, it never stays in one lane. All right, welcome back to our podcast, Where We Meet. I'm your host, Jessica Freiburg, and today I'm joined by
Izabela Poludniak
and Tyler Cuda.
Thanks for being back with us again today. Right now, we have the World Cup going on in the U.S. and Mexico and Canada in the North America area. And so we were going to start off by talking a little bit about that. Izzy, what are your predictions so far?
I feel like initially I thought Spain was going to win it all. After Argentina's game yesterday, I feel a little differently. Messi's just incredible. I don't know. It's like otherworldly. So I feel like there's a good chance that Argentina's going to win. But
it was an impressive comeback. Yes, 10 minutes or so were unbelievable.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of games have been like that, where it feels like, okay, this team's got in the bag, and then the last 10 minutes, right? Or it goes into extra time, and then all of a sudden the other team is just on top. So it's been I feel like an exciting World Cup to watch. I also feel like it's so much easier than in the past because it's in the same time zone as us, right? That's not always the case. And I feel like it's hard to get up in the middle of the night unless you're like a really big fan to try and watch the game. So yeah, it's been fun. A little disappointed that it's not in Chicago. Just a wee bit. I don't know if you guys have been seeing any of the social media posts about all the other host cities in the United States and everyone that's visiting from Europe and South America and all the other continents and experiencing the U.S. for the first time.
It's beautiful. Yeah. They like portion sizes, very hospitable. Our food is good.
Gas stations are big.
Yeah. They would go to a store and say, you have every version of everything in every size.
Yeah.
Like energy drinks or cereal. So I think when, we visit other countries, I don't know, we start to like each other more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, you've seen a lot of just people coming together, people going to bars or, joining out in fields where people are putting TVs out and just really coming together in different communities, a lot of diversity of, plot teams, whatever, it almost doesn't matter. People are just excited to be a part of the movement.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of videos of like opposing teams, right? Fans of opposing teams where you'd feel like, all right, there should be some animosity, but they're like, one team lost, one team won. And at the end of the day, they're still dancing in the streets after, right? So, I think it's been awesome to see.
The Americans were wearing the English jerseys and they thought that was nice. I know they were partying all night in Boston and the Bostonians were like, this is what we do. But they were so polite about it.
Yeah.
Like they weren't messy and it was, I don't know. I think it's a good thing for us.
Well, even I feel like the U.S. team, they went so much farther than I feel like we would have expected them to go. They played pretty well, except for that last one, a little tough for them. They got a little winded. But, I feel like because, again, it was in the same time zone, the games are being played here, I feel like so many more American fans got involved in supporting them and got interested in the game. And so I'm actually curious to see how many more of them or how many more U.S.-based fans there are going to be as a result of the World Cup being here. So, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I went to breakfast yesterday, and there was somebody from it was about the impact of sports on Chicago, and there was somebody from the Chicago Fire there, and then people from the Chicago Stars, and they were really talking about the movement of soccer, right, across the U.S. and just the impact and the growth that they've seen in that sport. Obviously, it's been huge in Europe and other continents for so long, and it just hasn't quite caught up in the U.S., right? And so I think that they're expecting that to have a big impact and, hoping to see how that impacts the U.S. markets, specifically Chicago, obviously. And being Chicago sports fans that we all are, I do think it's an interesting conversation to talk a little bit about from an accounting perspective or a financial perspective, the impact, maybe on not having the World Cup here, but also maybe the impact on having other sports teams and the growth of other sports in the Chicago area.
Yeah, I actually read an article recently about the World Cup because I feel like in watching some of the social media videos, it feels like, there's so much going on, around these games, right? There's so much travel. And so you're thinking, okay, it's so awesome that all these other cities are experiencing this, right? And it's kind of disappointing that Chicago is not. And so you're kind of like, well, what are we missing out on? And, I think part of the conversation that maybe isn't front of mind when you just see people celebrating is the cost, right? And it was actually pretty surprising that there is a cost for those host cities that is incurred in order to host those games. And it's pretty substantial. I think the total cost ends up being like $200 million per city. And it includes like the fees to FIFA, the extra costs for police to work overtime.
Yeah.
Right. All of the city services, that's a lot of people coming down to a city that isn't normally like filled with all those tourists. And so, I was actually kind of surprised that they have to actually pay a fee to FIFA to host, a game. And the article was saying that at the end of the day, most of the time, the city actually loses money on hosting a World Cup game. Now, all the surrounding businesses, right, they make money, right? So you have restaurants, right, hotels, and there's some revenue from that goes against the cost. But from the city perspective, it sometimes doesn't make any financial sense. But, you obviously give an economic boost to everyone else.
Yeah. Well, we were in Toronto on the day that there was a game played, and you could definitely see, they had multiple streets shut down. We watched them as they escorted the team bus to the stadium. So, yeah, I think it was Croatia, but they played Portugal in that game, and Portugal won. And so then you saw all the Portugal fans just like out in the streets, and it was actually pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't go to the game, but it was just kind of fun to see it, be a little bit of a part of it. But I'm sure that's a huge cost, right? Just it has dealing with the traffic and nothing else. And, I think we were talking a little bit before about how in some instances they have to build stadiums, right? And then that can be an additional cost incurred. But from our understanding, I don't think that was something that happened.
Yeah, it sounds like they were just using we're such a sports-driven country. I think we had the infrastructure.
We're a big country.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. And then you add Canada onto it and Mexico, right? I think both of them had existing stadiums that they used. And they were saying that actually it's the cheapest World Cup in a long time because no one had to build anything. It's just the cost of like putting on the event. I think that the one that was hosted by Qatar was one of the most expensive ones because I think they had to build most of the stadiums from scratch. So, and then it begs the question of like, okay, well, you build all these stadiums until you host another major event. What are you using all those stadiums for, right? And I think there's some argument to be made that from a financial standpoint, maybe it draws in tourists after the fact, right? Because I think you have to think about it too. Like, okay, well, if the city didn't host the World Cup, then it gives the city opportunities to hold other events, right? That also fill hotels and restaurants and bars, right? With maybe not the same amount of cost associated with closing streets, right? Or, paying overtime to police officers or security to be able to put on the event. And so that's where maybe there's that cost benefit. But if you get a bunch of people from outside of the U.S., right, that are now interested in coming back as tourists in the future, right, then maybe it makes sense.
I just looked at, I wanted to see how much that Qatar cost at 2022. It was $220 billion on the low end.
What?
And the United States, after all the dust settles, they're going to say it's going to be about $13.9 billion. That's a huge difference.
That is a huge difference.
Yes.
I was just going to comment that some of the cities that did host it, right? Because we were talking a little bit about the Olympics before we got on the mics here, but in the cost around that. But obviously, a lot of those cities would never be large enough to host something like the Olympics, right? Like a Kansas City or a Houston or something.
Atlanta had one too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, Atlanta did host the Olympics actually, but
that's right.
But I do think that there's, I guess
like Dallas could
there's, there are opportunities maybe for these cities that maybe couldn't host something international of that size to be a part of it in this way through the World Cup and hosting games. So to your point, I think there maybe is like a return on investment in the future of like, okay, maybe people wouldn't have visited that city that now experienced it, and there's potential return.
Well, and when you're seeing those interviews of people, tourists, right, from outside the U.S., and, they're being asked the question of like, well, how do you like Kansas City? And they're like, it feels like America, right? And some of them are saying that, like, you go to New York, it's a big city. You kind of saw it, on TV, right? Like, it doesn't feel necessarily, because it's very international, right? There's a lot of languages being spoken, a lot of diversity. And, you land in Kansas City, and that's not as prevalent, right? I'm sure that still exists, but it's not as prevalent. And so they're like, well, that feels like the heart of America, right? It feels like what I would expect America to be. And so that's what they're actually enjoying, right? And I think that that is beautiful, of like being able to see maybe some of the places that aren't known across the world, and seeing people fall in love with them. So
I saw they really appreciated the pancakes with breakfast. They don't have like sweets normally in the morning. They have like their meats and eggs, but they said we really like the pancakes.
yeah, breakfasts abroad are different. It's interesting. They're very like savory, right? Yeah.
And sports bring everyone together, I think.
Two of the best things in life, right? Yeah. So I kind of going back to that conversation around like sports and what they bring to the table, right? So I think this is a good example conversation-wise of like, well, maybe it doesn't necessarily bring a net positive, but I think sports in general in cities do bring a lot of value and a lot of return for those teams, right? But also the cities themselves. And we're a huge sports town, right? So, I think we feel it every day. Curious if there was any more conversation around that at the event you attended.
Yeah, well, so they talked, obviously, so there was somebody there from the Chicago Fire. They were talking a lot about the new stadium they're building, but really just the investment, again, in men's soccer, but also in women's soccer. And, a lot more corporate sponsorship that you're seeing, because they are seeing that more people, there's a lot of growth in it. They talked a lot about soccer, right, being the sport that's like the easiest to play. All you need is a ball. And so I think that's why it's so popular worldwide. But they, just in the Chicago area that you see a lot of kids, obviously it's a really popular youth sport. And so how do we convert that into more people wanting to play professionally?
Yeah.
And so they talked a lot about the reinvestment, and like they're doing programs through Chicago Public Schools and things like that to try to get more kids engaged in soccer. But also that, can create a return for the city, right? If more kids are involved and then they're continuing to stay involved in sports, and how that can have an impact. So they talked a little bit about that. I mean, there's also still talking about sports. Next weekend is Chicago's hosting the WNBA All-Star Game. So that's a nice opportunity for the city. I think there's a game at the United Center and at Wintrust, but then they have I think it's at McCormick Place.
So it's called McCormick?
What?
I think it's McCormick.
I think so. But like places that have large convention centers like that, they can also set up a lot of exciting, like they have all these player meet and greets, and like different companies come out and have all these experiences, which is a really cool part of the All-Star weekend. But Chicago actually had it, I think, 4 years ago, maybe. So it's kind of surprising that they were having it again. But again, maybe it's just an easy place for people to get to, right? It's in the middle of the country. So it's a little more accessible. Last year it was actually in Indianapolis. And so I think, we have the infrastructure, like you said, and there's a lot of opportunity to host stuff. And so I think the more that we can reinvest in our teams, and especially some of the, obviously everybody knows the Bulls and the Bears and the Cubs and the White Sox, and, those teams have been around a long time. There's a lot of investment in those teams, but seeing some of the private money now that's going into supporting the Fire and the Stars and some of these other teams just to help them, eventually maybe get to that same level, I think is really exciting.
Well, they could probably feed off the momentum from the World Cup, right? Like people are excited about it, and there's more and more stars being signed by MLS, right? Our MLS teams that are known across the world, right? And so that gets people excited to go see games. But I think you bring up a good point. I think part of the success is making sure that there is a path for, the youth to be able to make a professional career out of it, right? Because kind of like a chicken or egg issue, right? Is if you're going to invest that much into, league sports or whatever, and developing that talent, when there has to be a payoff at the end, right? And so, but in order for there to be a payoff, right, you kind of have to have people excited about the sport. And so trying to get, private investors involved, the community involved, I think that's the right direction to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially myself being a huge fan of women's sports. One of the things that was interesting about the panel discussion yesterday is Alyssa Nazer, who is the goalie. She was the goalie for the women's national team and was on the World Cup, the team that won, and the Olympic team that won gold. Anyway, so one of the things that's been fascinating, and a lot of people don't know about women's sports, is that a lot of people, especially in the NWSL, like their average salary was probably like $50,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so she was talking about how most of the people who played had to have a second job, right? To like support their family or to even just have like a decent lifestyle. And so that was kind of an expectation. And because the sport has evolved so much, and the same with women's basketball, they have a new contract this year where the average salary significantly increased from where it was. And so they're getting at a similar level, right? But that takes investors, that takes corporate money, right, to help them get to that point. But then it makes it a better opportunity for young girls and women who are trying to, be professional athletes and see that as like an actual thing to do versus going to another country and playing where you can make a lot more money. And now they can stay in the U.S. and play and give back to those cities that help support them to get there. So it's an exciting time for sure.
And not that I have a suggestion for the MLS, but I think they're right now in a very similar position as hockey once was. Of course, I relate everything to hockey.
Sure.
Hockey at one point was dying. It almost nearly went bankrupt. Many teams have folded over, but they reinvented the league. They made scoring a little bit quicker, faster. They changed some of the rules. And I think MLS is kind of on that same pace of where hockey was. The difference that hockey did is they started to add personality to the players. Mm-hmm. And I think we saw the effect of Chicago and the Blackhawks.
There was such an exciting time.
And Cade might come back. There's a rumor right now. He's deciding to.
Yeah.
But now that you see so many different rinks being built, and since I'm so involved in the community, has spread. Like when I grew up, I used to get made fun of for playing hockey. Now it's everyone's playing. And what how Chicago kind of kept the momentum is they signed Bedard. Bedard relates to the youth, so now everyone wants to be like Bedard. He's the highest selling jersey in the NHL. And now they're demanding around like $18 million is the highest contract as far as salary. And I see that with MLS. Lionel Messi is getting paid $28 million, but you could see some of the other numbers are between 11 and 7 million. And that reflects like the viewership is the revenue of players. Mm-hmm. So I think they're right on the cusp. I think getting some of the youth players to connect with kids would do really well. And if your city wins something, as we saw, kids want to be a part of that. It's like something you never forget. It's usually that bumper sticker you have in your car that fades away. It's just stuck there.
Yeah.
You get a tattoo or whatever it is, but you forever.
It's very permanent.
I would never.
Sure. Do that.
So not a suggestion.
You know where you were.
Yeah. It's like when the Cubs won the World Series. Like I know exactly where I was, right? Like when every Blackhawks game or every championship they won, I'm sure you remember where you were, right?
Yeah.
So,
and they're doing great things like they're having, instead of the All-Star game, 4 nations. So they have USA, Canada, Finland, Sweden all play each other. So that brings the countries now into a U.S. market.
Yeah.
So I think the MLS is onto something. I think Lionel Messi does play in
Miami,
right?
He does.
Yeah, he gets paid an extraordinary amount of money, which he should.
Yeah. But they were saying, I think that because the Miami market, I don't think was really very big at all before he got there. And obviously now it's like exploded, right? So a lot of it does depend on that big name.
It's like the Gretzky of the league. Like you need that. Sorry, I keep relating to.
It's all good.
Well, the Fire just signed Lewandowski, right? And he's a very famous striker. He's Polish, so I'm aware of the signing. And so I feel like that in itself will bring in a lot more fans. I mean, he's known around the world, but like the tickets now for the game against Messi in September in Miami, right, are just through the roof, right? Like the prices are really high. And because I feel like that draws more people in, because now you have 2 big names facing each other in the United States, right? In a competitive game, right? Because there's a lot of friendlies, right? Where you have teams from outside of the U.S. that come in that play soccer, and those fill up the Soldier Field pretty fast, right? And so it'll be interesting to see if that gets Soldier Field filled up.
And not a recommendation, but I think the Lionel Messi, they're getting older, which in the World Cup, it's given me, someone who plays recreational sports in my late 30s, a little bit of hope that we could still dominate a little bit.
Definitely dominate, yeah.
But I think for the sport to grow, they need to take the youth under their wing. They need to choose someone to mentor, and that should be the new face. But I think soccer's on a really good path. And it should explode. I think the infrastructure wouldn't be as much comparing to like a rink with the building and coils. Like you just need a proper field and a good location with ample parking. I think it has the ability to do really well here. So
yeah. Well, apparently the Fire's practice facility is like one of the best in the country. Like really amazing. So again, it's like one, it was kind of like maybe what you said before about what comes first, right? It's like the investment of money up front in the players and the facilities, all of that kind of needs to happen first. And then the people will come.
The people will come. Build it. It's like, what's that? I can't remember what movie it is from, but if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And they are building a new facility, the Chicago Fire. Not a practice facility, like an actual field, right? And so, I think you were saying earlier, it's sponsored by McDonald's, or it's going to be McDonald's field.
Yeah.
We should tell the Bears that too. We should work something out.
You're like, that's a touchy subject.
What's interesting is like I wasn't really aware of this because I don't follow MLS that much, but that somebody came in and bought their team. So up until a couple of years ago, the Fire, I think a bunch of different investors could invest in multiple MLS teams before, I guess.
Oh.
And so then there wasn't necessarily like, it was more of just like, oh, I'm investing in this to like maybe make some money down the road, but not to really like move this team or move this.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Into like the next generation, or really like invest more and more money into this to make it better. And so their team was sold a few years ago to a very wealthy individual that's a Chicagoan, I believe. And so he's really like helped them move in this direction of building this new practice facility and put a lot of his own money into it. So it's kind of different from the Bears that are kind of not willing to have put their own money as much into it and are looking near like
none of it.
the government and the people.
Well, I think they're willing to pay for the stadium. Am I wrong on that? I'm pretty sure they're willing to pay for the stadium. They just want everyone else to pay for the infrastructure around it. That is my understanding.
If they do the Arlington Heights.
Correct. But I think that
they've got the land, I know, but I didn't.
Yes. I think they were going to spend their own money on the stadium.
Okay. And
And they were asking just for money for the infrastructure around the stadium. But I think the bigger issue is that they, I think, still own money on the lease for Soldier Field. And so I think Indiana is willing to pay for all the infrastructure and more. And so maybe that's why they're in play, which I get. And I think that's a hard conversation, right, from a financial standpoint, because you have these teams that do have a lot of money, right? And they're asking for, an investment from the state or the city or whoever, or the local municipalities. And I think from the government standpoint, it's hard to make that decision because you are spending taxpayer money to do that, right? And so I think there are arguments to be made of like, well, the government spends money on a lot of things that maybe people don't appreciate or want them to spend money on, right? And maybe this is something that people would be willing to spend money on. I think the hard part is like, well, you're giving the break to, an entity or a corporation or a team that does have a lot of money, and that sometimes leaves bad tastes in people's mouths. But then you think about the flip side, right? You build it in Arlington Heights, people's property values go up, right? Like all that investment of that community, gets put in place. And so I think ultimately maybe you do benefit, right? Even though you do have to make that upfront investment as a taxpayer. I don't know.
I just like the idea of better traffic. I think just the way Chicago's designed is not friendly for a lot of people. So I got nervous when you said maybe we were hosting the Olympics one time, because that would make driving impossible. But
we tried to. I think we bid on one of them, but we didn't get it.
I don't know. It's an equal drive if you're in the suburbs to Arlington Heights. I think after a while, maybe they'll just put the border around it and call it. I don't know. It's so close, but no. But I think people would get used to it over time. But it's sad to see that team's been around for, I don't know. It's a staple in the league.
I still feel weird about the fact that it's not going to be in Chicago. I know that you go to Soldier Field and you see the skyline in the background and they're playing and the fireworks are going off. It's right by the water. Like, I don't know. It's just like to me, like almost like an otherworldly experience. I don't think you get that. I'm a huge Bears fan, right? But like, I don't think that you get that same experience and that same high in a dome stadium in Soldier Field without a retractable roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
That just disappoints me a little, if I'm being honest. But
yeah. But they want the Super Bowl, and that's the only way to do it.
Well, can't you just build it around Soldier Field?
I don't think there's enough land space.
Like if you expanded Soldier Field,
Have to expand like into the water. I don't know.
Close to the.
It's close. It's right up in the water. But I actually saw it from the water side recently and was like, oh wow, I don't think I've ever seen this from the lake side.
it's just very close.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think unless you get rid of all the parking lots, right? I mean, there's not really.
Yeah, you'd have to get rid of the parking lot.
Underground parking. I was talking with somebody a few weeks ago about this, and he's from New Jersey and was joking because no credit, even though I think the Jets and the Giants stadiums are both actually in New Jersey, but they're the New York Jets, New York Giants. He's like, they've always been in New Jersey, and New Jersey doesn't have any teams, even though all these teams technically have their stadiums.
Are in New Jersey, yeah. No knock on either of those teams, but I feel like the Chicago Bears are one of the original football teams in Chicago. Like, it's like the Green Bay Packers. And I feel like there is more to this. Like this conversation isn't just about the money. And I appreciate the fact that we're accountants, so we understand the money piece of it. But I think there's an opportunity in life to make decisions that necessarily aren't about the money, but are maybe about something deeper. And so I'm just
legacy.
The legacy, exactly, right? And so are you really weighing that as much as you should in these decisions? I don't know.
And they finally have a quarterback, and last season was so exciting.
Oh, it was
I'm legitimately not super into it. I was very much into it. The comebacks, everything else. But they've always said we need a quarterback. Now we have a...
Yeah. And they ranked our wide receiver as like he was a rookie last year.
Very good.
Him as like one of the best receivers for this season. So there's a lot of hope.
There's a lot of hope to give up.
Yeah. I mean, if it happens in Arlington, I think it'll still be great. I have mixed feelings about Indiana, but if they build a stadium wherever they build it, right, they're also going to build that entire entertainment district around it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a piece of the conversation too, is like, it's not just about the stadium. It's about like all these other things that come into play when you can build them. To your point, you can't build them on top of Lake Michigan, right? And so when you think about like the Cubs, right, like, yeah, a lot of their revenue comes from selling tickets, but a ton of it comes from the fact that they've invested in that entire entertainment district, and they own a bunch of those pieces on top of the Cubs. And so a lot of that revenue comes from that too. So it's almost like taking that blueprint and trying to replicate it for the Bears.
Oh, I guess we have more room for a soccer team. Or a bigger field.
Which I think is what they're planning to do with the Fire Stadium, right? And they're going to build around it as well.
They are.
On the south side of Chicago, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
but that leaves the question of like the Fires are now playing in Soldier Field.
right. So yeah, nothing's going to happen in Soldier Field.
Concerts.
Yeah.
I don't know. They tear it down. Isn't that a historic landmark?
Oh, I think it might be.
Which is why I think they can't do much with it. They like build on top of it.
It looks like a Roman Colosseum. It is.
Well, so see, my thought was like, if you somehow extend it upward, right? Because you can't change the bottom half of it, then you can like build columns and then encase them in glass so that you can still see the Soldier Field, right? Like as it was,
Piece.
right? But like this modern stadium sits on top.
Oh, that could be.
I don't know.
We should make some.
I'm not an engineer, so I feel like
An elevator thought.
That sounds like a great idea.
I don't know. I also feel like they built an entire city on the lake when the World's Fair was happening in 1899 or 1900. So I'm like, if they could do it in the 1900s, why can't we do it now?
Just put a wrap around a 1992.
Wrap?
No, it's all floating.
It's all floating. It's a floating stadium. Yeah.
It's an idea.
It's an idea. Yeah. I don't know. But it's interesting because I feel like we all get into it as fans. We don't necessarily always think about the monetary aspect of it, right? And there's a lot of that in play. So were there any key takeaways from that session that you had?
Again, I think it was really just about thinking about the investment, and I guess just linking that back to how we think about with our clients or anyone else, right? Like, what's the upfront investment? How is that going? What's the return going to be? How are you going to get more customers, more people to be interested in your product? And so a lot of it was, they think they have the momentum. To your point about it, leaning on the World Cup. The Women's World Cup is next year in Brazil. They're hoping, I guess Chicago's bidding for the Women's World Cup in 2031.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Where are they going to?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Soldier Field?
Again, this is not backed up information. I didn't cite the source on this, or they said that was an option potentially, and there was kind of a joke about like, let's wish that to happen, and for everybody in the room. But anyway, I mean, I think it was really just about the idea of like, the impact sports can have on a city and the youth and all the different aspects of it, like how you're investing money in. There's so many different avenues to invest in to kind of help grow that sport and to help, allow the city to like continue to prosper.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess we can finish up with predictions. You have Spain versus Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
Want to have any bold predictions? Who's going to win? Maybe a score you want to be bold about?
I'm going to say Spain's going to win.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
You just were talking about Mercy.
No, I know, but I've changed my mind.
Okay.
I think Spain's going to win, and I think it's going to be 2-1.
Wow. What changed?
Well, I just remember that my dad said that Argentina's going to win, and so I thought that I should, not.
I have that theory too. My first guess, I usually get things wrong, so I pick the other one. I get where you're on.
I think it's hard. I mean, I think part of me is like, I realize that it's hard to bet against Messi, but he won last time. And so I feel like it's somebody else's chance now.
What do you think, Jessica?
I think I'm also going to go with Spain. I feel like
Wow.
they, throughout the tournament, it just seemed like they had a little bit of a easier way through it. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Because of talent or because of the people that they played?
well, I don't know enough to know if that's what it is, but I'm going to go with them anyway.
Okay.
I thought you guys were both going to pick Argentina. 'Cause I don't know much. I was going to be the bold one for Spain, but I will say Argentina.
Oh, do you have a score you're predicting?
What's a typical score? No more than 3 usually?
Usually no more than 3.
Say 3-2. I'm going to say it's a high scoring game.
High scoring game.
Offense.
Okay.
I just saw I actually watched the Argentina-England game, and I noticed that like England scored 1, they played defense the whole time.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. So I think they should both just pull out.
Just go.
High scoring, high octane. That's the way I like my sports.
Watch it ends up being 0-0 on penalty kicks.
Yeah, that sounds right. I still don't know the extra time thing, but I like the sport overall.
Yeah, I like it when it goes into penalty kicks. I think that's
Very dramatic.
yeah, like the Germany game, and then poor guy who just didn't even get it on goal at the end.
And clearly I'm not a sports person, so I feel bad criticizing anyone, but I don't understand sometimes when they do the penalty kicks and they like kick it into the stands.
Well, that's what happened with this
It
guy.
happens a lot.
Wait, you do?
And I'm just like
Like they don't even get it on goal. Like it's not even
somebody's bad.
Just my analysis, I've noticed that the keeper will commit to one side, so I feel like you should just kind of
Just like wait.
one side.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
The keeper definitely has to just commit up front.
And why does the keeper come out further in the box? I have so many questions. Like in hockey, you come out further to make the net smaller. So I figured, but why they're like touching the top as a warm up, like get out there.
I don't know.
Because
Find a bit bigger.
But that's
Suggest-
really, not really big, but it's big enough where I'm like, how are you missing that? Like,
huge.
It's huge compared to hockey, but the ball is also bigger. So I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah, I think
I finally understand offsides.
I don't, and that's but
Yeah.
I can teach you about it later. I played soccer all through high school.
Oh.
I'd love to.
And then I realized that you can only get a penalty if you're in the penalty area. You can't get a penalty. You can just get a free kick if you're outside of the penalty area.
That's right.
We have so much to talk about.
Yeah. Corner kicks, all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Soccer 101.
101. Yeah. We should stick to accounting. I think that is the takeaway here. Stick to accounting.
All right.
Okay.
Well, if you guys want to hear us talk more about accounting and not sports, leave a comment down below.
Till next time.
All right.